Now, government says any person who creates or spreads fake news about the coronavirus can be prosecuted. Under the lockdown rules set in place for 21 days, it's an offence to spread incorrect information, manipulate news, content or create false stories or reports. South Africans have been instructed to verify information before sharing it. But what is expected from the media covering the pandemic? For more on this, I'm joined on the line by Kate Skinner, Executive Director of the South African National Editors Forum. Kate, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. Just before we get into the depth of the dangers of misinformation, you as a body are opposed to the term fake news. Why is that?
Yes, well, because we don't think it's a very clear term. We think that it kind of is a catch-all phrase, and it's much better to use the phrase, or the phrases rather, disinformation and misinformation. So misinformation is when you send out information which is incorrect, but there's no so-called evil intent around it. It's just that you don't know better and you send that information out. That's misinformation. Disinformation is much more problematic. That is when there is an intent to misinform somebody or misinform a community. And so that is more problematic. And therefore we think it's better to use the two terms, misinformation and disinformation, because they distinguish between an intent to misinform and just not knowing what's happening and sending out information which is incorrect, but with no particular purpose to misinform.
When it comes to the dangers of misinformation and disinformation on social media, what are the observations you've made there and the dangers that come with it?
So you're absolutely right. There of course, there's a lot of problems with social media because information is put out there. It isn't fact-checked. It can be spread. And when you're in a crisis such as we are in now, that could be incredibly dangerous. So for instance, if you put out information about, a particular drug, say, for instance, you said, this will cure COVID-19, or you put out a whole lot of information about, good hygiene practices, but in fact there are a whole lot of things that are in fact a huge problem. So that is where you're wanting to make sure that the media, for instance, picks up on any false claims, any information that would be dangerous, that is counter, actually containing the virus, and basically putting out the correct information. So I think social media is a problem because you can't tell whether that's been fact-checked or not. The information just spreads, and you, as a member of society, as a member of the public, need to check it and see, is this in fact correct or not?
Have you considered at all putting out a list of guidelines for the public to really sort of use to check whether or not the information that they're being, that they have access to is really real or not?
So what we've been doing in Senate is we've been basically promoting and pushing a number of projects that are out there that are doing absolutely fantastic work around disinformation and misinformation. So there's the Media Monitoring Africa Real 411 project that looks at saying, if you think that there's something, that is a problem, looks like misinformation or disinformation, you can go to the Real 411 platform and report it. And if it is in fact disinformation or misinformation, you can get that information taken down. And also, obviously, Africa Check is doing some fantastic work around, basically educating the public around looking at information and double-checking it, and also putting out the information around, these are in fact problems, these are myths, this is incorrect. So we're promoting organizations that are doing fantastic work in this area. But beyond that, we're also saying to journalists, it is your role to check information, and if you know that there is false information circulating, please counteract it with your narratives.
And what are your views on the changing role of reporters and journalists during this really crucial time of COVID-19?
So I think it's interesting because I'm not sure whether it is actually a change role. I think it's just that we need to be particularly vigilant. So the issue is that we've always been calling for journalists to be responsible, to adhere to the press code of the Press Council and to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission codes of conduct. So we're saying adhere to that. Check, double check, triple check all your facts, because now it's even more dangerous to put out incorrect information. So I think it's basically journalists need to always play a role of ensuring that they're responsible, that they don't sensationalize, that they check their facts. But maybe what we could say is that this time is even more important than normal times.
I say changing roles because we're now having reporters who are on air wearing masks and gloves, and there have been complaints about whether or not they're audible on TV when they're covering stories in areas that, that they should ensure their own protection. What do you think of the masks and the gloves as a body when journalists are out there covering these stories?
Oh, okay. I see exactly what you're saying. Look, I mean, the thing is that what we have said as SANEP is that it is incredibly important that journalists protect themselves. So we've basically put out a whole lot of rules and suggestions and recommendations around how journalists need to protect themselves. The big thing that we've been talking about is the physical distancing. So there is controversy around the masks. The issue is that if you are in any way sick or your immunity is compromised, then the media house shouldn't be sending you out into the field. It's more what we've been picking up from talking to various international players, such as the Committee to Protect Journalists, that is about the physical distancing. That is the crucial one. Of course, if you are in a particular place where, for instance, a quarantine place where people have got the disease, then you would need to be wearing your full protective gear. So you've got to be very careful. You've got to wash your hands. You've got to do the physical distancing, and of course, in certain circumstances, you would need to use the masks. So I think that each media house needs to look very carefully at what the particular assignment is.
Thank you so much for your time. The Executive Director of the South African National Editors Forum, Kate Skinner.